Hey everyone! Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It really helps YouTube recommend more stories like this one to you. Alright, let's jump right in. The first night, I thought it was just the ship creaking. You know how they say big cruise liners settle and groan at night? Steel shifting, ocean pushing, whatever, but that sound I heard, it wasn't the ship. It was tapping. 5 soft taps spaced out. Tap, 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 tap. It was coming from the other side of the sliding balcony door, but there was nothing out there. No people, no seabirds, no wind even. Just still. Black ocean. I stood there in my bathrobe, barefoot on the cold tile floor of my cabin, squinting out through the glass. The lights from inside made it hard to see anything clearly, but I knew I was alone out there. No deck below, no ledge, nothing for anyone to be standing on. I was on deck 10, private balconies. Just me, my friend Amber, and open ocean. I didn't open the door. I didn't even go near it. I just stood there watching. My skin started to crawl, and I felt this weird chill in my arms, like I'd walked into a room right after someone else had left. I backed away and got into bed without saying anything to Amber, who was already half asleep in the other twin bed. I told myself it was nothing. I should have known better. We'd booked the cruise on a whim. Last-minute deal. 5 nights, Caribbean loop, all-inclusive. It was one of those deals that sounded too good to be real. Premium suite with a balcony upgrade. Discounted 70% due to a last-minute cancellation. It was Amber's idea, really. She'd been through a brutal breakup and needed a distraction. I just went along to keep her company. The weird stuff didn't really start until the second night. I woke up at 3:12 a.m. exactly. Not because of a noise this time, but because of the light. The curtains over the balcony doors were open. I know I shut them before going to bed. I always do, even in hotels. I can't sleep knowing there's just a sheet of glass between me and darkness. But the curtains were open, and the balcony light was on. Amber was snoring lightly, turned toward the wall. I whispered her name, but she didn't stir. I sat up, staring at the door. There was condensation on the glass, and I could see streaks, like something had been wiped or dragged across it. It looked like someone had run their hand down the door. 5 distinct lines. I got up slowly, heart hammering. When I reached the door, I put my hand next to the marks. They were on the inside, not the outside. Inside. I jerked my hand back like it was burned. That's when I noticed the door was unlocked. I swear to God, I locked it. Both latches. I double-checked before bed. Now the top one was turned all the way open. The bottom latch was half-rotated. I locked them both, yanked the curtain closed, and turned the balcony light off. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I told Amber everything. She laughed it off and said I must have dreamt it, that maybe I opened the door in my sleep or she did by accident. But she never went out on the balcony. Said she didn't like heights. Said it felt weird out there. Later at breakfast, I asked our server if he knew who had the cabin before us. He shrugged. Told me room assignments were handled by the front desk. So I asked at the front desk. The woman gave me this polite but firm smile and said, "I'm sorry, we can't disclose prior guest information." I pushed a little. "Look, it's just that some weird stuff happened and I'm wondering if there were any complaints." She cut me off, still smiling, but her eyes got colder. "Your room is secure, ma'am. If you're uncomfortable, I can see if we have availability in an interior cabin, but there are no issues recorded for 1046. Interior cabin. No windows. No balcony." I declined. That night I tried to pretend nothing was wrong. I drank more than I should have. Amber dragged me to a karaoke night, and we stayed out until nearly 1 p.m. When we got back to the room, the balcony curtain was open again. Neither of us had touched it. We hadn't even been in the room since. I looked at Amber. "Tell me you opened that." She looked back at me and didn't even smile this time. "No," she said quietly. "I didn't." We locked the door, drew the curtains, left the balcony light on. At 4:06 a.m. I heard the tapping again. Tap, 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 tap 5 times, just like the first night. Then silence. But this time something was different. I rolled over, staring at the curtain, waiting to hear more. Nothing. No creaks. No voices, just silence, until I heard the click, like the sound a door makes when it finally softly closes. I shot up. Amber was gone, her bed was empty. The covers were shoved to the floor like she'd gotten up in a hurry. "Amber?" I whispered. No answer. I checked the bathroom. Empty. And then I looked at the balcony door, curtain half open. Top latch undone. I ran to it. The bottom lock was hanging loose. I opened the door. Ice-cold air hit me in the face. My breath fogged up instantly. The balcony was empty. The sea below was black and endless. And there, smeared across the glass door from the inside out, were 5 long streaks, like fingers. I screamed her name, and out loud this time. "Amber." No answer, just the wind, cold and sharp against my face. I stepped onto the balcony barefoot, my heart hammering. There was nothing. No sound of footsteps. No sign she had even been out here, no sandals, no robe. Not even a handprint on the railing, but she was gone. I ran back inside, grabbed my phone, and called the front desk. The woman answered with that same tight tone. "She's missing," I said, voice shaking. "My friend is gone. Her bed is empty and the balcony door was open." I expected urgency. Instead, she asked calmly, "Did she perhaps leave the cabin to meet someone?" "No, she doesn't. She was just here. She doesn't even go on the balcony." There were marks on the door, like someone dragged their fingers. "We'll send someone to check the area. Please remain in your cabin." Click. That was it. Not even a full minute later, I heard a knock. When I opened the door, 2 men in white uniforms were standing there. Not security, not even staff I recognized. Their name tags just read, "Guest Services. Is this cabin 1046? One of them asked. I nodded. "Yes, my friend, we're aware," he interrupted. "May we come in?" They entered without waiting. One of them walked to the balcony immediately and examined the latch. The other stood by the door and watched me. "She's not the kind of person to just vanish," I said, trying to stay composed. Something happened. There's something wrong with this cabin. The man by the balcony didn't even look at me. No signs of forced entry. She didn't walk out there. She didn't like the balcony. She told me it felt. I stopped. I was shaking. The other man finally spoke calmly. "Ma'am, cruise ships have cameras in every hallway. If your friend left the room, we'll find her. Sometimes guests go for a walk or meet someone in the lounge. The sea air can disrupt sleep. She wouldn't leave without her shoes. Or her phone. Or tell me, she wouldn't leave me in the middle of the night. We'll follow up shortly," he said. "For now, we recommend staying in your room." He handed me a small card. "If you remember anything else, call this number." Direct line, and then they left. I didn't sleep. I sat in Amber's bed, surrounded by her things. Her phone on the charger, her tote bag on the chair, her sunglasses still hooked onto the lamp. She was gone. But it was like she'd evaporated mid-sentence. Like she'd never been here at all. At 6:23 a.m., I got up and went to guest services myself. The woman at the desk gave me a tight smile. "How can I help you?" I stared at her. "I spoke to you hours ago about my missing friend. Amber Kells." Her smile didn't waver. "I'm sorry, ma'am, there are no guest reports under that name." I laughed, actually laughed. "Are you serious? You just sent 2 men to my cabin. We don't send cabin visits without documentation. You spoke to me on the phone." She typed something slowly. "I see a room reservation under your name, Olivia Pierce. Cabin 1046, single occupancy." I felt my stomach drop. "No, that's wrong. Would you like me to check your account?" She flipped the screen and showed me 1 guest. 1 card on file. 1 key issued. I stood there frozen. My voice came out weak. "She was just here yesterday. There are photos of us. I'll show you." I pulled up my phone's camera roll. The last picture was from the first day. A selfie of us in matching cruise robes on the balcony. But when I tapped it, the photo glitched. Amber's face was blurry. Not pixelated, just wrong. Her features smudged like someone had wiped their finger across wet paint. I tapped the next one. She wasn't in it. A chair was pulled up like someone had just left, but Amber wasn't there. In the next, there was just me. Awkwardly smiling, holding 2 drinks. But no one was next to me, like I'd been on vacation by myself. I stumbled back to the cabin. When I got there, her things were gone, not misplaced. Gone. Her robe was missing. The second bed was perfectly made. The tote bag, sunglasses, phone item, everything had vanished. Only my suitcase remained. Only my name was listed on the door plaque. I fell to the floor and sobbed. The next day blurred. I couldn't leave the ship. We were at sea. I tried asking other passengers, "Do you remember my friend Amber?" I showed them the glitched photo. Some squinted and shrugged. "I remember seeing you at trivia night, I think. But I thought you were alone." Alone. Every time. It was like she had been erased. Even the bartender we talked to our first night didn't recognize her. "You had a drink called, what was it? Something with pineapple?" He nodded. "Yeah, you had two. No, we each had one, unless I really had both. Unless I was losing my mind." The final night on the ship. I decided to sleep with the curtain open. I didn't want to, but something told me I had to see it. I lay there, staring at the glass, waiting. M, crow or M, nothing. 14M, tap, 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 tap. I sat up. There, through the glass, a shadow moved. I crawled out of bed slowly, quietly. My heart thudded in my ears. The balcony was dimly lit, fogged with ocean air, and just on the other side of the glass, a figure, motionless, facing me. It looked like a woman. Hair blowing slightly. Head tilted, I felt every hair on my body rise. I stood. My legs barely held me. I took one step forward. The figure lifted its hand, 5 fingers against the glass, and then gone, vanished in an instant. Opened the door. The cold hit me again. The balcony was empty, but this time, there was something left behind, on the railing. A wet handprint. I touched it, still warm. Disembarkation day. I walked off the ship in a daze. Customs, baggage claim, taxi line. My phone buzzed as I stepped outside the terminal. One new photo in my camera roll. No sender. I opened it. It was a selfie. Of me. Asleep. In my cabin bed. Taken from outside the balcony. Amber's hand was in the corner of the frame, 5 fingers against the glass. The moment the door locked behind me, I knew I'd made a mistake. It didn't sound like a regular hotel door lock. It was louder, a mechanical thunk that echoed through the room like a vault ceiling shut. I stood there, holding the welcome, packet in one hand and my suitcase in the other, staring at the steel door that had just sealed me in. I was supposed to be in a VIP all-inclusive suite. That's what the upgrade promised. Exclusive solo experience, ultra-private, no crowds, high-end everything. I paid extra. Like, a lot extra. But nothing about this room felt luxurious. There were no windows, no balcony. Just 4 walls, a king-sized bed and a wall-mounted screen. No phone, no remote, no door handle on the inside. Just that heavy door. I tried to turn the knob. It didn't move. Not even a rattle. Like it wasn't meant to open from this side. I waited a minute, assuming maybe someone would knock. Give me a tour. A bellhop, a steward, anyone. But no one came. The screen lit up suddenly. A woman's face appeared, smiling too wide, too still. "Welcome to your exclusive cruise experience, mister." "Hail," she said. "Please take this time to relax. Everything you need will be provided." The screen went black again. No menu, no buttons, nothing. That's when I realized I hadn't seen anyone else since the private check-in desk. Let me rewind for 1 second. I'd been on cruises before, but this one was different. A private company called EOS Voyages. Boutique experience, ultra-curated, with a new concept they called sensory minimalism, supposed to be the future of luxury. Their email ad said, "Let go of chaos, enter complete tranquility, no crowds, no screaming kids, just you and the open sea." Honestly, that sounded perfect. I needed the break. The booking page had limited spots, only 50 cabins total, it said. I grabbed one. When I arrived at the terminal, they pulled me aside at check-in and offered me an exclusive upgrade. For $200 more, I could be placed in their VIP isolation tier. They said it came with a private concierge, all gourmet, meals delivered, and total privacy for psychological restoration. That line should have been my first red flag. But I was burnt out. I didn't want to see people. I said yes. Now I was in a windowless room that looked like a minimalist prison cell, and no one had checked on me in 4 hours. I knocked on the door. No response, knocked again, harder. Hello? Nothing. I banged on it. Still nothing. Eventually, I screamed. No reply. That night, a tray slid through a compartment I hadn't noticed. A silent hatch near the bottom corner of the wall. On it was a plate of food, perfectly arranged, perfectly portioned, and completely cold. A little note was placed next to it. Meal 1 of 12. Please maintain silence during your restoration. I stared at the hatch. It was already shut again. The next morning, the same woman appeared on the screen. Same smile, same exact script. Welcome to your exclusive cruise experience, Mr. Hale. Please take this time to relax. Everything you need will be provided. I screamed at the screen. Where am I? I want to speak to someone. This isn't what I paid for. Nothing. It went black again. That night, the meal came again. Same cold food. Same note. Meal 2 of 12. Days passed. I don't even know how many. The screen never changed. The lights never dimmed. They stayed a soft, artificial white, like hospital lighting. There was no sun, no moon. Just white silence. I stopped sleeping normally. My body started twitching from the stillness. At some point, the meals started tasting off. Not bad, just wrong, too perfect, too smooth. One of the carrot sticks had no texture, just orange mush shaped like a stick. I broke it open with my fingers and saw nothing inside. Just foam. I didn't eat that one. Day. I don't know. 8. The screen turned on without the woman. Instead, it showed a live feed of me, standing there in the room. The camera angle was from the ceiling. I waved. My reflection waved. Then the image cut to black. Then a voice I hadn't heard before. Male. Calm. You've done well, Mr. Hale. Most guests don't make it this long. Psychological processing is almost complete. Processing? I started yelling. Begging. Demanding a refund. Screaming legal threats. The voice interrupted. This is not a resort, it is a study. Then silence. I pressed my hands against the wall. There was no seam, no vent, no sound. And then the lights dimmed. For the first time, I curled up on the bed. I thought about my family, my job, the time I got that ad in my inbox and thought, why not? I don't know how long I lay there. But when I opened my eyes, someone was sitting at the edge of the bed, a man, dressed like me. Same face, he smiled, but it wasn't mine. Not exactly, he leaned forward. Thank you for completing your integration. And then everything went dark, absolutely. Here's the chilling conclusion too. I woke up on the floor, no bed, no tray, no hatch. Just cold tile and that humming sound. Barely noticeable until you realized it had never stopped. The lights were still dim, almost too dim to see. But the camera was gone, so was the door. I mean that literally, there was no door. The wall where it had been was now smooth, seamless, white. I stared at it for what felt like hours, waiting for something to change. Waiting for that woman's voice to return, or the tray to slide through, or anything that felt like this wasn't just a padded white box meant to erase me. But nothing came. Until I heard my own voice. Hey, are you awake? It wasn't coming from my mouth, it was coming from the wall behind me. Yeah, the voice said again. My voice. I think he's conscious now. A panel slid open. 2 men in white stepped in, tall, sterile-looking with those too smooth, too silent sneakers. Between them stood me. At least it looked like me, same height, same eyes, same scar on the eyebrow. But the way he stood, the way he smiled, I knew instantly. This wasn't me. It was a version of me. He stepped closer, smiling casually. Hey, he said. I've been meaning to thank you. You made integration go a lot smoother than expected. I backed up, he laughed. Don't worry. This isn't goodbye. I looked at the 2 guards. What is this? What the hell is this? One of them spoke for the first time. You volunteered, Mr. Hale, the other added. Consent was given when you accepted the VIP tier. No, I didn't volunteer for this. Please refer to Section 12 of your digital waiver, the copy of me said, grinning. We both know you didn't read it. He walked toward me and crouched down until we were eye level. I'm you now, he said softly. Up there. Up where? I asked, my throat dry. He didn't answer. The next thing I remember is silence. Nothingness, really. Time doesn't move here. There's no light cycle. No sound, not even my heartbeat sometimes. Just that faint hum. That soft, almost imperceptible vibration under the floor. I don't eat. I don't sleep. I think they adjusted something. Whatever sedative or machine they used to make me feel hunger or exhaustion, it's gone. Now I've tried everything, scratching the walls, pounding, screaming, nothing. Leaves a mark, nothing echoes. I'm not in a room anymore. I'm in a place, a waiting space, a discarded space. I don't know how long passed before the screen turned back on. It was a split feed. Left side, a live video of my duplicate, laughing with other passengers at the deck bar, wearing my sunglasses, my watch, my skin. Right side, me, in this white cell, filthy, half-insane, watching. And then I heard him say it to someone, smiling over a cocktail. The isolation program really changed my life. I came back a whole new man. The woman next to him laughed, touched his arm. That's what they all say. They? Oh yeah, she said. It's the hottest luxury detox on the water right now. You think that's wild, he said, leaning in. You should hear what they do on Deck Zero. The woman's eyes widened. There's no Deck Zero. Exactly, they laughed. The screen went black. Then a voice came on. Not the smiling woman. Not the fake me. This one was older. Flat, end of observation cycle. Subject 1046 deemed mentally stable for repurposing. A click and then something opened behind me. A door. Real this time. Cold air flooded in. I stepped toward it, expecting to be dragged out, but no one was there, just a hallway. Clean, empty, lit like a hospital. I walked. Eventually, I found another room, another me. Inside, slumped in a chair, unmoving. Eyes wide open, mouth shaped like it had been screaming for a long time. I'm not sure who I am anymore. I might not be the original. I might not even be the first copy. All I know is I'm still on this ship, still in these white walls, and every day I hear new voices on the other side. Some are crying, some are laughing, some are me. And every few hours, the screen turns on, same woman, same smile. Welcome to your exclusive cruise experience. Please take this time to relax. Everything you need will be provided. It wasn't on the map. That's the first thing that freaked me out. Deck 13. There was no Deck 13. Every ship map skipped it. Deck 12. Then straight to 14. I even Googled it once and read that it was some kind of superstition. Unlucky number, they said. Passengers complain, but there I was, standing in front of a metal door marked Deck 13, restricted access, the only reason I found it. I bought one of those exclusive experience packages, upgraded last minute at check-in, said it would unlock areas of the ship other passengers never see. I thought it was some fancy bar or lounge, but this felt wrong. The hallway was too narrow, too cold. The lights overhead were buzzing, one flickering slightly. The carpet didn't match the rest of the ship, and there were no other people, just me, my little gold VIP wristband, and that metal door. I almost turned back. I should have. They don't advertise the Deck 13 experience online. You only get offered it if you buy into the premium tier at check-in and say yes to one specific question. Are you open to a deeper form of immersion? That's the wording the lady used. I laughed and said, sure, I'm bored anyway. She slid me a second card, smaller than the regular room key. Black, no logo. Just the number 13 stamped into the surface. No photos allowed, she said, smiling too widely. We don't want to ruin the surprise. That night, I waited until after 1 a.m. The hallway outside my cabin was dead silent. I slipped down the service stairwell they told me about, through a door labeled maintenance only, down one more level than the map even showed. That's where I found the metal door. The black card opened it. No sound. No click. Just the door slowly drifting inward. It was pitch black inside. I stood there for a minute before stepping through. The door shut behind me. Hard. At first, I thought it was just a dark hallway. But then the lights flickered on, not all at once, one by one. Old yellow bulbs that clicked as they came to life, stretching out down a hallway that seemed too long to fit on a cruise ship. It looked like a hotel hallway. Faded wallpaper, ugly floral carpet, wooden room doors on either side, each one numbered 1301, 1302, 1303. All the way down I walked slowly. Every step echoed. There was no engine sound. No vibration. No music, just silence. And then I heard it. A knock from behind one of the doors. I froze. The knock came again, 3 times. From 1307, then a whisper. Not through the door, from the hallway. Don't open it. I spun around. No one there. I waited, breath held, every nerve screaming to run, but I didn't, because I saw something. A figure, just barely. Down the hall at the far end, standing in the shadows near the emergency exit sign. It looked like a man. Tall. Still. Facing the wall. I stared at him. He didn't move. The hallway light buzzed above me. When I looked back, he was gone. I turned around and ran. Tried to get back to the metal door, but there was no door. Just more hallway. More doors. I walked for what felt like 15 minutes. Turning corners, looking for stairs, for signs, for anything. Eventually I found an old elevator. No buttons. Just a lever. The plaque above it read, "One way up." I pulled it. The elevator groaned to life, louder than anything else on the deck. When the doors opened, I stepped in. It didn't move. Instead, the walls flickered with projections, fast images I couldn't fully register. Faces, eyes, the ocean swallowing a deck. A woman with her mouth open in a silent scream, and then the screen went black and words appeared, "You were never here." The elevator doors opened again. I was in a hallway that looked normal. Bright, clean, music playing softly overhead. Deck 9, the regular part of the ship. I walked back to my room in a daze. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I asked guest services about Deck 13. The girl smiled politely and said, "There is no Deck 13. I pushed a little. I was there last night. I used the black key card, the exclusive experience." Her smile dropped slightly. "We don't offer that package anymore. But I can't discuss this further, sir." That night, I checked my wristband. It was gone. Not just slipped off, gone. And in my bag where I'd kept the black key card, there was nothing. No card, no paper. No proof I had ever been invited there. But here's what really got me. The next morning, I woke up to find something slipped under my door. A folded note. No handwriting. Just printed block letters. "You walk the hallway. You belong to it now." And below that, a list of names. Mine was last, right under it. 1312, reserved. After I found the note under my door, I didn't leave my cabin for the rest of the day. I kept reading it over and over like the meaning would change. "You walk the hallway. You belong to it. Ow. 12, reserved." It didn't even feel like a threat. It felt like a statement, a confirmation, as if whatever was down there had already decided I was part of it. I tried to show the note to someone, anyone. First to a crew member outside my cabin. She looked at it, frowned, and said, "Sir, that's just your room service receipt." I blinked. "What? No, look again." She did, and smiled politely. "It says 2 Caesar salads and a Sprite. Is there something wrong with your order?" It didn't make sense. Back in my room, I checked the note again. Same words. "You belong to it now." But to everyone else, it was invisible. Or it looked like something else. Like the ship itself was protecting whatever the hell Deck 13 really was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing knocks, not at my cabin door. Out from the hallway, from underneath, like someone was inside the floor. Pounding. 3 knocks. A pause, then 2 more. Morse code? I didn't know. But it repeated. Over and over. Until 4:13 a.m. Then silence. The next day, I finally met someone else who'd seen it. Her name was Marina. Mid-30s, traveling solo. She caught me in the hallway, staring at the floor marker between Deck 12 and 14. She said, "You've been there too, haven't you?" I didn't even pretend. Just nodded. She pulled me into a side stairwell. I went last year. Different ship. Same company. Same offer, she whispered. They don't just erase you. They copy you. I laughed, nervous, dry. What are you talking about? I made it back, she said. But someone with my face disembarked in my place. Went home, took my job, my apartment. Even has access to my accounts, and that's insane. Go ahead, she said. Try calling someone. Tell them what happened. I already had. My mom didn't pick up. Neither did my best friend. I left voicemails. They weren't returned. She wasn't crazy, not completely at least. Then she looked at me, eyes wide, terrified. I saw your name on the wall. Wall? In the hallway, she said. Room 1312. Yours is next. When you return, it'll be your last time. I'm not going back, I said quickly. She nodded. But I could tell she didn't believe me, neither did I. 2 nights later, the black card reappeared. I found it inside my suitcase, hidden beneath my clothes, right where I'd searched before. Same design, same number. 13. I flushed it down the toilet. It was back on the desk the next morning. The final night of the cruise, I made a plan. I packed everything. Waited until sunrise. Stayed in the public areas until disembarkation. Opened. I was among the first in line. My hands were shaking as I scanned my keycard at the terminal. Checkpoint. The system beeped, then turned red. Please wait for a crew member. Man in uniform walked over. Mr. Russell? I nodded. I'm afraid we have you listed for one more night. You've been reassigned to a different cabin. No, I have my ticket right here. I'm done. The cruise ends today. He smiled in a way that wasn't a smile. Your itinerary says otherwise. He handed me a printed slip. Cabin 13 to 12 remains on board. Confirmed. My luggage was already gone. I made a break for it. Ran past the checkpoint. Out toward the walkway, screaming for help. I swear to you, I got off the ship. I stepped onto the gangway. I felt solid ground, sunlight, crowds, but when I blinked, I was standing in a hallway again, floral carpet. Faded wallpaper. Door 1312 in front of me. Waiting. I don't know how long I've been here now. There's no time here. No sunrise. No meals, just that hallway. And sometimes, I hear footsteps faint and dragging. Sometimes, I see doors open and people step out. Some are crying, some just stare. Some walk past me without seeing me at all. Every day I walk to the end of the hallway. Try the elevator still says one way up, but now I understand I never went up, I went in. Sometimes the screen in the hallway flickers on, shows my family. My apartment. My coworkers, a version of me is there, living, laughing, answering emails. No one misses me because something else went back in my place. If you ever find yourself on a cruise and someone offers you a deeper experience, if someone hands you a black key card with a number 13, don't take it. Don't open the door. Don't go down the stairs because once you walk the hallway, it never lets go. We were already too deep into the jungle when I realized we weren't going back. It wasn't just the overgrown trail or the fact that the so-called local guide hadn't said a word in 20 minutes. It was the silence, no birds, no bugs. Just our feet on cracked, muddy earth and that humid, choking heat pressing in from every side. I turned to Jake, whispering, "This doesn't feel right." He shrugged. "It's authentic." I wanted to scream, "Let me back up," just enough to give you what matters. This was my first cruise. My boyfriend, Jake's third. He insisted we book one of those non-touristy excursions at our second port. Said we'd get a better experience if we went local. We found a kiosk set up just outside the terminal gates, folding table, a hand-drawn sign that read, "Cultural Immersion, Real Village Tour, Small Groups Only, $50 cash, free lunch." It wasn't affiliated with the cruise line. That should have been red flag number 1. But the guy running it was charming, fluent in English, tan like he lived outdoors, and wearing one of those too perfect smiles. "There are places tourists never see," he told us. "We'll take you there, off-grid, just one van." No crowds. We signed up, along with 4 others, an older couple from Oregon, and 2 college-age girls on a graduation trip. The van ride started off fine. The driver, our guide, didn't speak much, just nodded and pointed as we passed sugarcane fields and thatched roof homes. There was no air conditioning, just the buzz of insects and an old radio playing static. After about an hour, the paved road turned to dirt. 15 minutes later, The dirt turned to mud. The trees thickened around us, vines hanging low. Signal bars dropped to 0. I glanced back at Jake. He gave me a thumbs up. I stared at him like, really? Then the van stopped, the guide got out. Didn't say a word. Just motioned for us to follow. We walked and kept walking, until the trail narrowed so much that we had to walk single file. No signs. No trail markers. No sounds except leaves crunching and our shoes squishing into soft ground. That's when I whispered to Jake that I wanted to turn back, and that's when I noticed something else. The van was gone. I spun around. It had been behind us on the trail a few hundred feet back. Now, nothing. Not even tire tracks, just jungle. We kept walking, because what else could we do? The guide still hadn't spoken, just kept walking ahead like he knew where he was going. We followed him, through vines, past carved stones, down steep moss-covered paths. Eventually, we entered what looked like a clearing, but it wasn't a village. It was a circle of wooden posts, weathered, broken, and carved with strange symbols. No huts, no people, just silence and bones, not animal bones. Too long, too straight. One of the girls gasped. The older man asked, "Where's the lunch you promised?" That's when the guide finally spoke. He turned to us, smile gone, and said, "It begins now." He walked back into the jungle and didn't come back. We ran after him, all of us, stumbling, screaming, but he was gone. Gone, no footprints, no path. We doubled back to the clearing, and even that was gone. Like the forest had swallowed it whole. Panic started to set in. The older woman started crying. Jake tried his phone. No signal. I already knew that. We argued for a bit about what to do. I said we should stay put. Let them come find us. Jake said we should try to retrace the trail. One of the girls said we should go deeper, that maybe there was a real village nearby. We split up. That was the last time we saw the older couple. Hours passed, or maybe longer. It got dark fast, like someone threw a switch. We built a fire with some damp brush and huddled close. That's when we started hearing it. Drums, far off at first, then closer but not steady. Not like a rhythm, they started and stopped like signals. Then the screaming started, one sharp cut-off scream. Not an animal, a man. Jake bolted upright. That was Steve. Who? The older guy. He was already running before I could stop him. I didn't see him again until morning. When I found him, he was barefoot, covered in mud and blood, just standing in the river, staring at nothing. His shirt was ripped. He didn't say a word. I tried to pull him to shore. He shoved me back. "They're behind the trees," he whispered. "Who?" He just kept repeating it. "They're behind the trees, watching, waiting." Then he pointed downstream. "You can make it if you go now." I didn't ask questions. I ran. It took me hours, maybe all day. Eventually I found a dirt road, then a truck, then a town. I told the locals I'd been lost, that our guide abandoned us. They said nothing, just looked at each other. Then one man leaned in close and said, "You were lucky. Most don't come back." Here is the terrifying conclusion too. The man in the village offered to drive me back to the port. It took almost 2 hours. The whole ride he said nothing, just stared ahead like the road itself unsettled him. When we got to the terminal, I expected the cruise ship to be gone, but it was still there, massive, gleaming, as if nothing had happened, as if 6 passengers hadn't vanished into the jungle the night before. I didn't have my ID, no wallet. I thought boarding again would be impossible. But the moment the port official saw me, he said, "Oh, there you are," like they'd been expecting me, like I hadn't been missing at all. Back on the ship, everything was normal. People were sunbathing, drinking, laughing. I was still covered in dirt and mosquito bites. My shoes were torn. My legs ached like I'd run a marathon barefoot. When I got to the front desk to ask if anyone else had returned, the woman gave me a tight smile. "No other guests reported missing," she said. "You were on the approved excursion manifest. What about Jake?" I asked. She checked her screen. "I don't see a Jake listed under your reservation." I stared at her. "We booked together. We've shared the same cabin all week." She turned her screen slightly like to show me guest. Nicole Ramsey. Room 7216. Occupancy 1. I ran to the cabin. Everything that had been Jake's, his suitcase, his shoes, even his cologne, gone. The second bed was perfectly made, untouched. Even our selfie from the first day, the one I had posted on Instagram, he wasn't in it anymore. I was standing alone at the railing holding 2 drinks, just like that. It was like he never existed. I found the 2 college girls in the buffet line that afternoon. One of them, Sam, looked at me, confused. "I thought you left the cruise," she said. "What? You were with me. In the jungle." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Then she turned to her friend and said, "Is she okay?" Like I was some stranger. Like she didn't remember, I grabbed her arm. "We were on the same excursion." She yanked away. "Get security." I didn't stick around. That night I stayed in my room. I didn't leave. Didn't sleep, just kept replaying everything. The van, the guide, the clearing, the screams. Jake. At around 2 a.m., someone slipped a piece of paper under my door. No knocking. No footsteps. Just the faint shk of paper. Sliding on carpet, I waited a full minute before grabbing it. There were no words. Just a hand-drawn map pointed the same trail we'd walked in the jungle, and one spot marked in red. Left behind. I tried showing the map to the guest services desk the next morning. They told me I needed to stop spreading misinformation. The head of security escorted me back to my cabin and said, "You'll be disembarking tomorrow. We suggest you get some rest." He didn't smile, he didn't even blink, and that's when it clicked. He had the same eyes as the guide, same dull stare, same too smooth skin. I got off the ship the next day. I didn't tell anyone what happened, didn't report it to the cruise line, didn't call the authorities because I knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever that excursion really was. It wasn't a scam, it was a selection. They don't want your money, they want people. And now that I'm home, I'm seeing things, reflections in glass that don't match my movements. Phone calls that ring once. Then stop, a local ad popped up on my feed this morning. Cultural excursions available. Remote villages. Real immersion, just one van. Small groups, lunch included, same font, same language, different location. They're still doing it. They'll keep doing it. And Jake's still out there. Somewhere past the trail, behind the trees, watching, waiting. The moment I saw the photo of myself and the one I didn't remember taking, I felt my stomach drop. I was alone in it, standing against the ship's rail, arms crossed, looking right at the camera. But my eyes were completely blacked out. Not red eye, not a lighting error, just gone, like someone had smudged them out with ink. Worse, my smile looked off, like it had been edited too wide, like it wasn't mine. I didn't remember posing for that photo. Didn't remember seeing the photographer that day, but there it was, tacked to the wall in the ship's photo gallery under a banner that read, "Complimentary portraits, courtesy of Marco. Your ship photographer," and below that, "Claim your free copy before disembarkation." I should have walked away. Instead, I took it. I don't usually like photos of myself. That's why I avoided the onboard photographers the whole trip. I even remember waving one off at dinner the second night. But Marco was different. He wasn't wearing the usual staff lanyard. No uniform. Just a vintage-looking camera strapped to his chest and this lazy, charming smile. I first noticed him the third day, weaving in and out of the pool deck crowd. He only took a few shots at a time. Never too many. Always quick. Quiet. The other photographers were loud, trying to hype people up for group shots. Marco just watched. He didn't even ask permission, a guy near me joked. Creepy paparazzi vibes, and we all laughed. But then he turned and looked directly at me, raised his camera, click, and walked away. I forgot about it. Until I saw the photo in the gallery, and I wouldn't have taken it. I really wouldn't. If I hadn't seen that the woman next to me had 3 portraits of herself laid out, all free. She said, "Isn't it wild how good he makes us look?" I didn't even know he took this one. I nodded, grabbed mine, and left. The moment I got back to my cabin, I shoved it in a drawer. But that night I had the worst dream. I was standing on the deck, middle of the night, wearing the same outfit as in the photo, only everything was quiet, too quiet. No water, no engines, just silence. Then I turned around and saw myself staring back at me, same pose, same black eyes, and it smiled. I woke up gasping. The photo was on the nightstand. I hadn't taken it out of the drawer. I brought it to guest services. Told them it had been placed in my room without my permission and that it was messed up. They didn't seem concerned. One woman laughed softly. "Oh, Marco's photos are always a bit stylized." "What do you mean?" I asked. She hesitated. "He has a flair for the surreal. Guests love it. You can decline to be photographed next time." "I never agreed in the first place," another staffer chimed in. "Are you sure it's your photo? People get mixed up all the time." I stared at him. "Yes, it's me, but something is wrong with it." He held up the photo under the counter lights and his smile faded just slightly. Then he slipped it into a folder and said, "I'll make sure it's deleted from our records." That night, I saw Marco again, near the formal dining area, right after sunset. He was snapping photos of couples against the glass railing, sunset backgrounds, classic cruise shots. When he turned and saw me, he smiled. "Want to try again?" he asked. I froze. "What? You didn't like the first one, right? Let's retake it. I'll make it better." I shook my head. "No, I never agreed to that one either." He just smiled. Raised the camera, click. After he took that second photo, without permission, I tried to grab the camera. Marco didn't even flinch. He just smiled and stepped back, like he knew I wouldn't actually touch him. Like he was counting on it. "I just want people to see themselves clearly," he said. Then he turned and walked into the crowd. I followed, pushed past waiters through the dining area out to the deck. But he was gone, like he'd disappeared into the air. The next day, a crew member was missing. At first, no one said anything. Then whispers started. A bartender who hadn't shown up for her shift. She wasn't in her cabin. Her badge wasn't scanning. But security said she'd disembarked early. That didn't make sense. We were still at sea. I asked one of her coworkers about it, a guy named Emil who'd served us drinks the night before. He looked confused. "What bartender?" I said her name. He stared at me like I was making it up. "I've worked this route for 6 months," he said. "There's no one by that name on staff." I went back to the photo gallery. Her face was in one of the group photos on the wall. I pointed it out to the staff. They said, "That's just a guest. She left the ship already." No, it was her. Name tag and all. I tried to take a picture of the photo, but my phone glitched. The screen froze on a black static blur. When I looked back at the gallery wall, the photo was gone. That night, I checked the photo Marco had taken of me. The second one, it had been slipped under my door sometime during dinner. No envelope. No note, just the photo, same railing, same pose, but this time, my mouth was missing, not blurred. Not smudged, just gone, smooth skin. Like a mannequin, I ran to the mirror. Nothing wrong. Yet. But my reflection felt slightly delayed. Just enough to notice. Just enough to make my stomach twist. I finally found the darkroom or whatever passed for one on this ship. It wasn't listed on the map, but I remembered seeing Marco slip into a side hallway behind the gallery wall. I waited until after 2 hours. Slipped down the hall, found the unmarked door. Locked, of course. I picked the lock with a hairpin. Inside, it smelled like chemicals and old carpet. Red lights glowed overhead, rows of drying lines, hundreds of photos clipped and hanging. Not just portraits, surveillance shots, people in their cabins, people crying in bathrooms, couples arguing in stairwells. And Marco was standing in the center of it all, his back to me, developing something. I stepped forward quietly. He turned, slowly, like he already knew I was there. Held up the photo he'd just finished. It was me. Only this time, I wasn't standing. I was lying in bed, eyes wide, mouth gone, hands crossed over my chest like a body at a viewing. I ran, didn't sleep, didn't speak. I just waited for the ship to dock. Every mirror I passed, I checked myself. Still there, still whole. Mostly. On the last day, I packed everything. Got to the disembark line early. But as I handed in my key card, the crew member scanned it and said, "Oh, looks like your photo hasn't been cleared." "What?" "We can't let guests leave until their ship photo is confirmed in the system. It's a security thing. I didn't authorize any." He turned the screen to show me. My photo. The second one. No mouth, just a blank stare. I shook my head. "That's not me." He looked between me and the photo, then slowly nodded. "You're right," he said. "Something's wrong." He smiled and handed me a new card. Room 613B, special processing. I didn't go. I ran. Out of the port, across traffic, into the city. Didn't stop until I found a hostel and locked myself in a tiny room. I've been here for days. The photo is still in my bag, and every time I look in the mirror, my reflection lags just a little more. This morning, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, no one was there, just a photo. Me sleeping, eyes open, smile too wide. Here's the next immersive entry in the cruise ship scams that will ruin your vacation series. I didn't even enter the raffle. That's what still messes me up. I never put my name in, never scanned my wristband, never filled out a form. But on the fourth night of the cruise, a black envelope was slipped under my door. No name. Just the ship's logo in glossy ink. Inside was a single card. You've been selected. Private event. Deck C. 11:30 p.m. Dress code. Black only. No phones. Tell no one. I should have thrown it away. But I didn't. It wasn't the first I'd heard of it. A few people in the hot tub had whispered about a real party below deck. Not the cheesy cruise-sponsored kind with line dances and mojitos. Something exclusive. No photos. No staff. Just music, drinks, and something the public isn't allowed to see. They called it the crew cabin party. No one knew who ran it. But everyone who went said the same thing afterward. I don't remember much. It was wild. Best night of my life. You wouldn't understand, but here's the catch. Only 3 people per cruise ever got invited, and they never went in together. When I told my friend Eli about the card, he said, "It's probably a drug thing." I was ready to agree until I checked the ship's deck map. There was no Deck C. It skipped from Deck B, engine rooms, to D storage. C didn't exist. 27 p.m. I stood at the end of a hallway behind the main theater, wearing black jeans and a black button-up. At the far end, a narrow metal door. No markings, just a tiny slit with a green light. The moment I got close, it clicked open. No one opened it. It just unlocked itself. Inside, a metal stairwell spiraled down, dimly lit by old industrial bulbs. I took one step, then another. No voices, no music, no one ahead of me. No one behind. The door shut hard behind me. I don't know how far down I went. It felt like 5, maybe 6 flights. The air got colder with each step. The stairs ended at another door, this one slightly ajar. Inside, a narrow hallway. Low ceiling, pipework exposed. The kind of place passengers never see. I kept walking. Eventually I saw it, a red light glowing from a cracked open door ahead. Music thumped faintly. Deep bass. Slow rhythm. I pushed the door open and stepped into the strangest party I've ever seen. The room was long, low, and lit entirely in red. People were dancing, slowly. No one spoke. No one smiled. There were maybe 20 people in total. But here's the thing. I didn't recognize any of them. Not from the pool. Not from dinner. Not from shore excursions, and they were all wearing the same thing, black clothes. Black wristbands. Black masks covering their faces. Not medical masks, but party masks. Smooth, glossy, featureless. I looked down at mine. Still the regular cruise wristband. I suddenly felt wrong, like I wasn't supposed to be here. A man approached me. Tall. Pale. Wearing a black captain's uniform with no insignia. He didn't say anything. Just handed me a drink and dark liquid in a small glass. I didn't drink it. Instead, I wandered the room. The music pulsed. The lights flickered. People danced, but not like they were having fun. More like they were following a rhythm they didn't fully understand. At the back of the room, there was another door. A steel one. 2 masked figures stood in front of it, unmoving. I watched as one guest walked up to them, nodded, and was let through. The door slammed shut behind them. Waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. They never came back. I turned to leave. The hallway was gone. Not like the door had closed, like it had never existed. The wall was solid steel, no exit, no stairs. Just red light and the smell of something metallic and wet. I pounded on the steel wall for nearly 5 minutes. No echo, no change. Just the slow pulse of red light and bass, like the room was breathing around me. When I turned around, more people had entered, wearing black. Moving slowly, all of them masked. But something was wrong. The number never stayed the same. 1 second there were 20, then maybe 30, then back to 20. I was sure I'd seen one man twice. Same mask, same watch. He made eye contact with me. I blinked, and he was gone. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was the man in the black captain's uniform again. Still silent. He held out another drink. This time, a glass bottle. Old cloudy, sealed with wax. The label read, "For the chosen." I shook my head. "I want to leave," I said. He tilted his head. "You already did," he said, and smiled. I backed away, moving toward the wall, scanning every face I could, but they weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at the steel door in the back because it was opening. Not all the way, just a few inches from the inside. And the thing that stepped out, it wasn't wearing black, it wasn't wearing anything. It looked human mostly, but wrong, too long, too symmetrical, skin like wax and eyes too wide open. It walked to the center of the room. Everyone froze, then dropped to their knees. Except me. I just stood there, shaking, while the not-human thing turned its gaze on me. "Only 3 per cruise," a voice said beside me. It was the man in the captain's coat. 3 invited. 3 entered. 2 went through the door. You're the last. I tried to step back, but the floor beneath me felt soft, like it wanted to swallow me whole. "You didn't drink," he said, almost gently. "They never drink." The thing in the center of the room opened its mouth, but instead of a voice, I heard my own voice echoing through the walls, a recording of me laughing from earlier that day. Talking to Eli, ordering breakfast, a jumbled remix of my real life, projected like a memory I hadn't given permission to use. Then the voice said, "Do you consent to dissolve?" And before I could answer, the red lights flickered and everything went black. When I woke up, I was in my cabin. The sun was rising. The ship was docked, all my things were packed, and the black envelope was gone. I ran to guest services. I asked about the crew cabin party. "Deck C, the black invitation." The woman behind the desk smiled. Calmly, "There is no deck C," she said. "You can check the logs," I snapped. "Security cameras?" She held up her hand. "I'm sorry, sir, but your name is on the disembark list. We hope you enjoyed your time with us." I found Eli near the breakfast buffet. He looked at me like nothing was wrong. "How was your night?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't speak. I tried again. No sound. Not even a breath. My hand flew to my throat. My mouth. Nothing was wrong physically, but nothing came out. The black wristband was back on my arm, where my regular one had been. It looked fused to my skin. When I finally stepped off the ship, no one stopped me. No one checked ID. No one said anything. But the man in the black captain's coat was standing on the top deck, watching the crowd, smiling. And for just a second, I thought I saw myself beside him, standing there, wearing black, watching me leave. Here's the next immersive horror story in the cruise ship scams that will ruin your vacation series. The second I connected to the free cruise Wi-Fi, I knew something was off. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, who wouldn't take advantage of free internet on a ship? But by the time I checked my bank account, my heart was already in my throat. It wasn't just the small charges and a $50 charge here, $120 purchase there. No, it was the larger ones, $5,000, $10,000 more. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. I didn't know what to do first. Call the bank? Call the cruise line? Maybe the police? I thought about reporting it to the front desk. But then I saw something that stopped me cold. My profile picture on the ship's Wi-Fi portal, the same one I'd just set up 20 minutes ago, was no longer mine. I blinked and reloaded the page. The person staring back at me was someone else, a woman, smiling, blonde hair, about my age, but not me. Panic hit me like a wave. I checked the ship's passenger list. My name was still there. My cabin number. Everything looked normal, but my picture was gone, and the woman who had replaced me was listed under passenger ID 2431. It felt like a glitch at first. Maybe something with the system. Maybe my photo just hadn't updated properly. But then I went to the ship's bank app. The one where I linked my account to pay for onboard purchases. And that's when I saw the most terrifying thing. I wasn't me anymore. The app was linked to an account I didn't recognize. The name on the profile, Samantha Taylor. Not only was my name gone, but the account had a different address. Different phone number. Different everything. Someone had stolen my identity. I sprinted down to guest services. The line was short, but the woman behind the counter didn't even look at me as I approached. "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need help. I think someone took my identity and put it on the Wi-Fi. I connected a few minutes ago and now everything's wrong." She gave me that polite, rehearsed smile. "Ma'am, we get these complaints often. Someone's probably just logged into your account by mistake. We'll get it sorted." "No," I said. "No, you don't understand. Someone is using my identity. They took my picture off the Wi-Fi portal. There's a different name on my account. My bank account is being drained." Her smile didn't flicker. She didn't even type anything into her computer. Instead, she simply handed me a printed sheet with terms of service written on it. "You agreed to our Wi-Fi terms during check-in. It's standard for guests to connect to our secured system." "I did agree," I said, "but it's not that. I've been hacked. Someone has stolen everything." "Let me confirm your information," she said, not looking up. She typed in my name, my cabin number, and a few details before handing me a shipboard credit card. "Use this for any onboard purchases and you'll be fine, ma'am. I'll report the issue to IT, but most people recover after a few hours." I took the card without thinking, and as I walked away, I felt it. The eyes on me, someone was watching me. I turned quickly, but no one was there. The next few hours were a blur. I tried to check my social media accounts, but my passwords didn't work. My emails were unreadable, and all of my bank accounts were either empty or linked to transactions I hadn't made. I was frozen, unsure what to do. I tried calling the bank, but the ship's internet was too slow. I could barely get a connection before the call would drop. Then at around 3 a.m., I received a text from my phone number. It was a message from the real me. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." I stared at the screen, barely able to breathe. That's when I realized something worse than identity theft had happened. It wasn't just someone stealing my information. They were using it. The woman on the Wi-Fi portal, the one with my photo, but wasn't a glitch. She was me. I ran back to the Wi-Fi portal to check my profile again. Same photo, same name. Everything looked like it had been restored to its default setting, but it wasn't right. The moment I refreshed the page, a new notification popped up on my screen. "Your new profile has been verified. Enjoy your stay." I didn't know what that meant, but the hair on my neck stood up. I couldn't sleep after that. I couldn't even think straight. Here's the disturbing conclusion too. I couldn't sleep after the message. It was like my entire reality was being pulled out from under me. I couldn't trust my own phone. I couldn't trust anything on the ship. All I knew was that someone was wearing my identity, and I had no way of stopping it. I stayed up, scrolling through everything I could, checking social media, my bank accounts, my contacts, but nothing made sense anymore. The more I searched, the more I realized my phone wasn't just hacked. It had been replaced. The woman, the one with the new profile on the Wi-Fi portal, wasn't me anymore. I was the one locked out of my own life. And that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was no one seemed to care. By the next morning, I was almost too afraid to leave my cabin. I kept staring at my reflection, checking my eyes. I felt like something was off, like I wasn't fully me anymore, but I couldn't pinpoint it. My reflection didn't look wrong, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was just not me. I tried to call the front desk again. No one picked up. I checked in with the ship's Wi-Fi support, but got an automated response saying there was high demand and no one would be able to assist until the next day. I was beginning to feel trapped, and that's when I noticed something else. Every time I walked down the hall, I started seeing the same woman and the one with my face. She was in the crowd at breakfast, walking in the lounge, standing at the pool. Each time she was too close, too present. The worst part was that when she saw me, she smiled, a perfect knowing smile, a smile that wasn't mine. Around 3 p.m., I decided to confront her. I followed her. I had to know what the hell was going on. I had to ask her what she'd done to my life. She walked through the ship's grand stairwell, down a narrow hallway that led to a side exit, a part of the ship I'd never seen before. There was a door marked crew only. I hesitated but followed anyway. She looked back, her eyes locking with mine. Her smile didn't falter. "You don't belong here anymore," she said, voice calm but firm. That's when I felt the panic rise. This wasn't me talking to her anymore. She was me. I ran, heart racing. I didn't stop until I got back to my cabin. I locked the door and sat there shivering. Something had shifted. I wasn't sure what had happened to me, but I wasn't the same. And she, the woman who had taken my place and why I was now fully entrenched in my life. Then the texts started coming. My phone buzzed. "It's almost time," I froze. The message was from my own number. The next text came minutes later. "You'll never escape." The same woman from the Wi-Fi portal had taken everything. My name, my profile, my memories, and now, my life. She was using my identity like it was a costume, and she wasn't going to stop until she had everything I had left. That night I went to the upper deck. I thought the fresh air would help me think, but it only made everything worse. The lights on the deck were too bright. The air was too still. I needed answers. And I thought if I could find someone, anyone who wasn't caught up in this mess, I might stand a chance. That's when I saw her again. The woman, my replacement, was standing at the railing. Staring out at the ocean, she turned and looked at me. "Why are you still fighting?" she asked, voice soft but somehow invasive. "You knew this was coming. You've been chosen." I didn't understand. I was about to speak, to ask how this happened, but I didn't get the chance. Her smile widened, and everything blacked out. I woke up in the infirmary. The sterile white walls were the first thing I saw. My head was pounding. My throat was dry, and the worst part, I couldn't remember how I'd gotten here. A nurse hovered over me. She was unfamiliar, but the calmness in her face unsettled me. "Rest," she said. "You've been under observation for 24 hours. You're safe now." "Safe?" I asked, trying to sit up. "You were found on the deck," she said. "You've been wandering for days, but you're in good hands now." Days? I looked at my phone, desperate to check the Wi-Fi again, but she stopped me before I could unlock it. "It's been cleared," she said. "Don't worry. You can try to connect again once we reach shore." I could feel the knot in my stomach tightening. None of this made sense. By the time we docked, the woman, my replacement, had vanished, but so had everything I'd known. When I checked my phone again, I saw a notification. It was a picture of me, smiling, standing at the railing. The same photo from earlier, only this time, my eyes were dark, hollow. There was something wrong with the smile. Too wide, too forced. I didn't look like that, but I had no choice. When I left the ship, no one stopped me. No one asked any questions, and the woman, she was gone. But as I walked off the gangway, I caught sight of something in the reflection of a glass window. It was me, or it looked like me, but she was there too, smiling, and I realized with cold horror that she wasn't gone. She was still inside me. Our honeymoon should have been perfect. We'd talked about it for years, just the two of us, away from the world. A luxurious cruise around the Mediterranean, everything planned down to the last detail. A suite with a balcony, spa treatments, private excursions, the kind of trip you only dream about. And for the first few days, it was everything we hoped for. Sunrises over the sea, wine on the deck, laughing at silly things with the person I loved. But then things started to shift. It wasn't the ship. It wasn't the crew, it was me, or someone pretending to be me. It started small. A few strange looks from the staff when we ordered drinks. A comment from a fellow guest. "You look so familiar." At first, I laughed it off. After all, I was just another face in a crowd of thousands, right? But then it kept happening. By the fourth day, I started feeling like I was being watched. I'd look up in the dining room and my reflection wouldn't quite match my movements. When I passed the crew quarters, a few people would glance at me strangely, like they knew me. But I didn't know them. I asked Amelia if she noticed anything off, but she just smiled and said I was being paranoid. "It's just the jet lag," she said. But it wasn't just that. The night before we were supposed to dock, it got worse. We'd had dinner in the ship's formal dining room. Steak, wine, the works. I remember the music was soft, the lighting dim, everything calm. I felt this wave of nausea hit me right after dessert, but I brushed it off. I figured it was the wine, but when I got up to use the bathroom, I passed a mirror in the hallway, and someone else was staring back at me. At first, I thought I was seeing things. The reflection was slightly off and like it wasn't quite me. I stopped and stared, but the face was so close I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was me. But it wasn't. I could see it in my eyes. Something was wrong. I turned to leave, but a crew member was standing behind me. He looked familiar. "Are you okay, sir?" he asked, voice flat. No warmth, no concern. "Yeah, I'm fine, just tired." His eyes lingered a moment too long before he nodded, stepping aside. But I didn't feel fine. I felt watched. I felt trapped in my own skin. I hurried back to our cabin, trying to shake off the feeling. Amelia was waiting for me on the balcony, reading a book. She looked up when I entered. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice full of that soft, caring tone I loved. I tried to smile. "Yeah, I think I'm just tired. Maybe we should call it a night." She nodded, setting her book aside. "Sure, tomorrow's our last day." The next morning, everything was wrong. I woke up to the sound of someone knocking on our cabin door. I checked the clock, 6:30 a.m., early for any of the scheduled events, but I figured it was a staff member with paperwork or an excursion update. When I opened the door, the man standing there was not someone I recognized. He wore a black suit with no name tag. His expression was impassive. "Good morning, sir," he said. "I'm here to escort you to the dock." "Dock?" I repeated, confused. "We're not due to dock until noon." He raised an eyebrow. "You're scheduled for disembarkation now." I looked back at Amelia, who was still in bed, staring at the ceiling. She looked as confused as I was. "We didn't request this." The man stepped aside, blocking the doorway. "Your names are listed. We have everything prepared." I glanced at Amelia. She didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. Something felt deeply wrong. We followed the man down the hallway, but the ship felt empty. No crew members, no other passengers. Just silence. At the terminal, there was no line. No usual disembarkation process. A woman greeted us as we approached. She checked our names on a list and smiled warmly. "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave," she said. "Everything's ready for your arrival." I froze. That was not our name. We were the Crawfords, not the Hargraves. Amelia blinked, confused, but nodded. "We're the Crawfords," she said, her voice unsure. "What's going on?" The woman looked at us with calm eyes, as if we were the ones who had missed something. "Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave are expected. Your ship record shows you've been aboard for the full voyage." "What?" I asked. "This is a mistake. We're the Crawfords, and we've only been on the ship for a week." But the woman didn't blink. "Your cabin has been cleared for disembarkation as per our records." The man in the black suit stepped forward. He handed us our bags, but I noticed his eyes never left us. "You've been assigned to a special exit," he said. "Please follow us." We didn't have any choice but to follow, but the exit didn't lead to the usual passenger terminal. Instead, we were taken down an unmarked hallway. The walls were bare, no signs, nothing to indicate where we were going. We reached a door. It wasn't an exit. It looked like a storage closet. The man opened it. Inside were rows of identical luggage. Same brand. Same design. A dozen matching pieces, and beside them, our passports, our boarding passes, but they were different. The names were the same, but the details were wrong. The photo was too blurry. The dates were off, and there at the top of the page was the name Hargrave. Here's the chilling conclusion to the return trip. When the man handed me our passports, I couldn't speak. I just stared at the documents, feeling the world shift under my feet. My hands were shaking as I reached for them, but before I could touch them, I heard a low click behind me. The storage closet door had swung shut. I turned to the man in the black suit. "What is this? Why are our names different?" He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me anymore. He just stood there, still and silent. Amelia's voice broke through my panic. "This isn't right," she said, her voice trembling. "We're the Crawfords, not the Hargraves." "What's going on?" The man finally spoke, his voice monotone. "Your records are in order, Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave. It's time to disembark." I felt a cold rush of fear. This wasn't the ship's crew trying to help us. They were replacing us. I started, but my throat felt tight, and my voice cracked. "You've been aboard the entire voyage." "Mr. Hargrave." the man repeated, his eyes scanning us like we were a set of coordinates. "It's all in the system. Everything is as it should be." "But that's not possible," I said. "We haven't been here the whole time. We're not supposed to be on your records. We're the Crawfords," but the man said nothing. He just handed me our passports again. He didn't even blink. The next few minutes felt like hours. Amelia grabbed my hand and we started walking, but I felt like I wasn't in control of my own body. Like I was watching myself move from somewhere else. We followed the man in silence down the long, dark hallways. The air was stifling, the walls closing in as the ship seemed to stretch out, its layout warped as if it was no longer the ship we'd boarded. The architecture seemed wrong, distorted, impossible. I tried to turn back, but the man was always just a few steps ahead of us, his eyes on the ground, his pace never quickening. We reached the disembarkation zone, but it wasn't the regular terminal. It was a cold, sterile room filled with uniformed staff members who all seemed to be waiting for us. There were no other passengers. No one was looking around or chatting like they would at the usual exit. Everything was orderly, too orderly. The staff smiled at us as we entered, their faces too calm. One woman handed us new boarding passes, ones that read Hargrave on them, and everything about them looked wrong. The fonts, the logos, the dates. Amelia tried to speak, but the words got stuck in her throat. "Welcome back, Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave," one of the crew members said. "Everything's been prepared for your arrival." It was the same greeting they'd used earlier, but this time it was colder. There was no warmth in their eyes, no recognition, no humanity. I glanced at Amelia and I could see the panic in her eyes. This wasn't right. This wasn't us. I stepped forward, trying to get some kind of explanation. But before I could speak, the woman who'd handed us the boarding passes looked at me with a perfect smile. "I'm afraid your departure will need to be postponed for further processing," she said in a clipped, robotic voice. "Processing?" I repeated. "What do you mean?" We're not Hargraves. You've got the wrong records. You've got the wrong people." But no one moved. They all stared at us blankly like we were the ones in the wrong. The woman smiled again, almost too wide. "Your file indicates you've been aboard for an extended voyage. All records have been updated." Amelia backed away, her eyes wild. "We're not Hargraves. You're lying. You've switched us out with someone else." The woman didn't flinch. She simply turned to the crew members who'd been standing nearby, still as statues. "Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave to their accommodations. They've completed the process." I tried to grab Amelia's hand, but a tall man in a uniform stepped between us, gently but firmly. "You'll need to come with me," he said, his tone cold. Please, I didn't know what to do anymore. I didn't know how to fight this. It felt like we'd been erased, and then it clicked. This wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. We were replaced. They took us down into the bowels of the ship, far beneath the usual decks. It wasn't a place for passengers. The walls were metal. Exposed pipes snaked across the ceilings, and the lights flickered above us. This wasn't a part of the ship we'd seen before. The man in the uniform led us into a small room with a desk. There was a screen in front of it, a computer monitor that blinked with strange codes. The man gestured for us to sit, but I stayed standing. "I don't understand," I said. "Who are the Hargraves? What happened to us?" He didn't answer. Instead, the screen flickered again and a list of names popped up. Hargrave, Benjamin. Hargrave, Amelia. Underneath their names were various dates and numbers. Passport info. Boarding details. But it didn't match ours. We were gone. Not just erased, but replaced. I didn't realize what was happening until the man reached for the computer. "There was a mix-up," he said quietly, almost apologetically. "The records weren't cleared in time. But don't worry, you've been processed." That's when I realized they weren't just erasing our names. They were replacing us with someone else. Before I could react, the door opened again and a woman walked in. She looked at us like we were strangers. Strangers she didn't recognize. Her eyes went straight to the screen. I froze. It was her, the woman who had taken my place. My face, my smile, my eyes, the woman who had been me. The woman who walked in was me. Or at least she looked like me. Her eyes locked onto the screen, and for a moment I thought she was going to say something to me. Something familiar, something that would ground me in this nightmare. But she didn't. She just stood there as if waiting for the man in the uniform to speak first. He glanced at her, then at us. His expression never wavered. The processing was delayed, he said, his voice flat. The Hargraves will be remaining aboard for further evaluation. Evaluation? The woman in front of me shifted slightly, then turned her gaze directly toward me. She didn't smile. Her lips barely moved, but her eyes, those eyes, they were mine, but they were wrong. Empty. She stepped forward, and I felt myself taking a step back without even realizing it. She wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to be the one in control of my life, but now she was here staring at me like she owned it. You're the Hargraves, I said, my voice shaky. I'm the Hargraves. Her expression softened for a brief moment, but it wasn't sympathy. It was something colder, something calculated. Everything is in order now, she said, her voice distant, echoing in my mind. Your names have been restored. Your records have been processed. I couldn't process her words. They made no sense. My hands were shaking, and I had to grip the edge of the desk to steady myself. No, you don't understand. I'm the Crawfords. We're the Crawfords. This is a mistake, but she didn't respond. She just watched me. And behind her, the man in the uniform started typing something into the computer. A long moment of silence stretched between us. I felt my thoughts spiraling, my chest tight, and then it happened. The woman smiled. Not the pleasant kind of smile, not the one that said, I'm here to help. It was a smile that came too easily. It didn't reach her eyes. It was mechanical. Your accommodations have been arranged, Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave, she said, almost as though she were speaking a script. I felt bile rise in my throat. My legs gave way and I collapsed into the nearest chair. I couldn't breathe. I don't understand, I whispered. Who are you? What are you doing?
What did you do to us?
The woman stood still, her gaze unwavering. You were chosen, she said simply. We don't make mistakes. You've been part of the process for a long time. This is just the final stage. The final stage? What the hell was she talking about? Suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't some weird glitch in the system. We were never supposed to be the Crawfords. We were part of something else. Something that had nothing to do with us. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I couldn't. I was frozen in place, watching her as if some invisible force was holding me still. The man behind the desk finished typing and stood up. Everything's in order, he said, his voice like cold glass. The Hargraves can proceed with disembarkation. The process has been completed. No, I shouted, standing up and slamming my fist onto the desk. This isn't me. This isn't us. We're the Crawfords. We were never supposed to be here, but no one responded. I didn't know how much time passed, but when I finally turned to Amelia, she wasn't the same. Her eyes were distant, her expression vacant, like she had already accepted this fate, whatever it was. Amelia? I whispered, stepping toward her. Please look at me, but she didn't. She didn't even blink. Her voice came out soft, slow. We've always been the Hargraves, Ben, she said, the words not quite her own. It's just our time now. I staggered back. I couldn't breathe. No, this isn't happening. I'm not this. I'm not supposed to be this. The woman, my replacement, Ari smiled again. Yes, you are. You've been processed. You're part of the system now. The man in the uniform stepped forward. It's time to disembark, Mr. and Mrs. Hargrave. The real world awaits. I turned, running for the door. I had to get out. I had to leave this place before I was swallowed by it completely. But the man caught my arm. Please, I gasped. Let me go. This isn't who I am. I'm not supposed to be anyone else. Everyone is supposed to be someone else, Mr. Hargrave, he said, his voice barely a whisper. That's the point. I pulled away, desperate. But there was no escape, because I had already been erased. I don't know how I got back to the deck. The air was cold. The waves were crashing against the ship. But the world felt wrong. The ship had shifted. The sounds were muffled, the lights dimmed. Everything was moving too slowly. I looked out over the water, hoping for some kind of sign. Anything to let me know that I hadn't just fallen into an alternate reality, that this wasn't my last memory before being erased. I turned back to Amelia. She stood by the railing, her back to me. But when I looked at her again, her face was different. It was no longer the woman I'd married. Her eyes were empty. I didn't belong here. I wasn't Hargrave. I was the Crawford who had been stolen. The ship's horn blew, low and mournful. cutting through the thick silence that had taken over everything. It was over, and we were never going to get off the ship. I still don't know how it happened. I thought I understood how cruise booking worked, especially with the apps these days. You search, you pick a room, you get a confirmation. Simple, right? But when I showed up at the terminal, I didn't expect to be handed the keys to a room that wasn't even supposed to exist. I had booked my trip last minute, mostly as a solo getaway to unwind. The deal was too good to pass up. Everything included 3 days in the Caribbean, discounted 75% from the usual fare. They said the cabin was a special last-minute upgrade. Everything was handled online. I didn't even get to pick a cabin. I was assigned to one. I didn't think much of it, especially since I'd never cruised before. I was excited to leave, tired of the same routine. It seemed like an easy escape. The first sign that something was off happened when I checked in. I was standing in line behind a couple who'd been chatting about some excursion they'd signed up for. The woman at the desk was typing something into the computer, glancing at me every few seconds. "Room 1349, she said, handing me a key card. I froze. "What, there's no 1349, she blinked at me. "Excuse me? On the deck maps, there's no room 1349. It goes up to 12, then straight to 14. She stared at the screen for a second, then looked back at me, the corners of her lips twitching like she was trying to hide a smile. "The system says room 1349, everything's in order, sir." I didn't say anything after that. I just nodded, took the card, and walked away. But my mind was racing. What was going on? Was this a mistake? Some kind of administrative error? The rest of the check-in process went smoothly, but my nerves were already starting to prick. The ship itself was massive, beautiful, bustling with activity, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I tried to distract myself with the view from the deck and the excitement of being on board, but I kept coming back to that room number. I thought maybe it was some kind of hidden suite, one of those rooms they didn't advertise. But when I checked the ship's map again in my cabin, nothing. I scoured the hallway, hoping to find some indication that I was just missing it. Nothing. Later that evening, I went to my cabin to drop off my bags. The corridor was empty and the lights overhead flickered just slightly. It felt like it was too quiet, too isolated. When I reached the door to room 1349, I was almost expecting it to be locked or have some kind of warning. But there was nothing. I slid the keycard into the reader and the door clicked open. Inside, it looked like any standard cruise cabin, if a bit smaller than I had imagined. There was a single bed, a desk, a bathroom tucked into the corner, and a small window looking out over the ocean. The curtains were drawn tight, though, but as I stepped inside, something caught my eye. The walls weren't white or neutral beige like you'd expect. The wallpaper, a deep crimson with faint floral patterns, made the room feel strangely claustrophobic. The air smelled stale, like it hadn't been aired out in days. I walked over to the window, ready to take in the sea breeze and forget about the weirdness. But when I pulled the curtains back, I saw nothing. Not the ocean. Not the sky. Just a black void. Like the window was completely blank, just a pitch-black screen. I pressed my hand against the glass. Nothing. I could feel the heat radiating from the glass, but the view outside didn't make any sense. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The next few hours were uneventful. I unpacked my things, tried to relax, and even had a drink in one of the onboard bars. But the odd feeling wouldn't leave me. I kept glancing at the clock on the wall. My room felt like it was stuck in time. At dinner, I mentioned it to one of the crew members. She just smiled politely, but when I mentioned room 1349, her expression flickered for a second before she turned away. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe it was just a random coincidence, a weirdly named room. But when I got back to my cabin that night, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. The door was still unlocked. As I stepped inside, I saw the same thing. The walls, the blank window. But this time, the air felt colder, heavier. The shadows seemed deeper. I tried to ignore it, to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling, and then the knock. It was late. I was on my bed scrolling through my phone when I heard it. A single knock at the door. I froze, unsure whether I had imagined it. I got up, walked to the door, and peered through the peephole. There was nothing. I hesitated. then opened the door cautiously. The hallway was empty. That's when I saw it. At the far end of the corridor, the lights flickered again. The shadows seemed to move as though something was there, just out of reach. I felt a chill run through me. The next morning, I went to the front desk to report a malfunction with my room. The receptionist, a man I hadn't seen before, listened to my complaints but didn't seem fazed. He simply nodded and handed me a new key. "We'll move you to a different room, sir," he said with a polite, practiced smile. "Why?" I asked. "What happened to 1349? He paused for a split second before replying, "I'm sorry, sir. There's no such room on the ship." My stomach dropped. "What?" I asked, disbelieving. "I was just in it. Room 1349, he shook his head. "I'm afraid you must be mistaken. We don't have a room 1349. It's not on the manifest and it doesn't exist." I tried to protest, but they wouldn't listen. I was moved to a new cabin without any further explanation. But I couldn't forget what had happened. I couldn't let go of the fact that I had stayed in a room that wasn't supposed to exist. When I returned to the dining hall that evening, I overheard a few crew members talking in hushed voices. I caught snippets of their conversation, something about the old rooms, and then one of them saying, "No one stays in room 1349 anymore." I never saw the crew member who'd moved me again. No one mentioned room 1349. It was like it had never existed, but I knew what I'd experienced. And as I sat on the deck staring out at the open water, I realized I wasn't sure whether I'd ever leave that place. I should have known the moment they asked for extra charges at disembarkation. It felt off, sure, but I didn't think it was anything more than a misunderstanding. They'd told me I had a few outstanding fees to settle before leaving the ship, and at first I didn't mind. These things happen. Travel's messy. Sometimes things get overlooked. But as they led me down to the lower deck and told me to wait, that's when I realized I wasn't getting off the ship. It had been a great week, honestly. The ship was incredible. A luxury liner with every amenity I could have wanted. The meals were 5-star. The excursions were breathtaking. I'd met great people, shared laughs, and let go of all the stress that had been building up in my life. I should have been excited for the final leg, the disembarkation. My flight was booked for that afternoon, and all I had to do was settle any final charges and I'd be home. But as I arrived in the main lobby, I was stopped by a staff member with a clipboard. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm afraid there's a small discrepancy on your account. There are some additional charges." "Charges for what?" I asked, immediately on edge. "I paid everything up front." "Just some minor fees," he replied smoothly. "Please follow me to the lower deck and we'll sort everything out." At first I thought it was a simple misunderstanding. Maybe I'd signed for something I didn't remember. Maybe I'd missed a payment for an excursion or a room upgrade. I followed him, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. The lower deck was dark and quiet. Nothing like the lively, bustling upper decks. The walls were bare, the lights flickering in places. It felt like I was walking through a part of the ship they didn't usually show to guests. "Just a few more steps," he said. I nodded, but something didn't sit right with me. This wasn't a usual checkout process. There were no signs of other guests around. The ship's crew seemed different too. They weren't as friendly, almost robotic in their movements, like they were following orders but didn't really care about anything beyond that. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, I was ushered into a small, dimly lit room. A desk, a couple of chairs, a few too many security cameras for my liking. The man who had led me here smiled politely, but there was no warmth in it. He gestured to one of the chairs. "Please sit. The process will only take a few minutes." I sat down, trying to keep my composure. A woman entered the room, clipboard in hand. She was wearing a uniform, but it wasn't the same as the crew members I'd seen before. Her eyes were too cold, too sharp. She didn't speak immediately, just sat down across from me, clicking her pen and glancing at the screen in front of her. "We've run into a small issue," she said after a moment. "Your payment information has been flagged. It seems there's an outstanding balance on your account." "Flagged?" I repeated, confused. "But I paid everything before boarding." "Correct. Everything except for the recent charges. Your onboard account was flagged during the processing stage, and we need to settle the discrepancy." "Okay," I said, trying to stay calm. How much? Her fingers danced across the keyboard. The screen reflected the light from the desk lamp as she tapped away. "A few $1,000s," she said, her voice clipped. "A few thousand?" My heart started to race. That can't be right. I've paid for everything already. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she just stared at the screen, her face unreadable. "I'm afraid the charges are valid," she said eventually. "They include unpaid service fees, administrative charges, and a few add-ons." I shook my head. This didn't make sense. "No, I'm telling you, I paid everything. I'm not paying anything else." She didn't respond. Instead, she stood up and walked over to the corner of the room where a small filing cabinet sat. She rifled through a few papers, then returned with a sheet of paper. "Here's the breakdown," she said, sliding it across the table. I glanced at it, but before I could read anything, a deep, cold feeling crept over me. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. Suddenly, the door behind me opened and 2 security officers entered the room. They were dressed in black, their faces emotionless like they were just following orders. I looked up at the woman, panic rising in my chest. "What's going on? Why are they here?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, watching me with that same cold, detached expression. "We need you to stay here for a while," one of the officers said, his voice low and flat. "No," I said, standing up quickly. "This is a mistake. I'm leaving. I'm not staying here." But the officers moved toward me, blocking my exit. "You've been flagged for further processing," the woman said, almost cheerfully. "There's no need to worry. You won't be leaving the ship today." I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean, further processing? I'm leaving. Let me out of here." But the officers didn't move. They just stood there, arms crossed, watching me. Hours passed. Maybe more. It was hard to tell. I was kept in that room with no windows, no phone, no access to the outside world. Every few hours, the woman would come in, take a look at my paperwork, then leave without saying a word. I tried to stay calm, to think of a way out, but the reality was sinking in. I wasn't being charged for anything. That wasn't it. I wasn't just dealing with a scam. I was being detained. I was being trapped. I tried to leave again, but the officers stopped me. Their grip was too strong, and the woman didn't even flinch. "Stay calm," she said. "This is just a formality. We're processing you for departure." It was when she said that, processing, that the full weight of the situation hit me. I wasn't being processed for departure. I was being erased. By the time the ship reached port, I wasn't allowed to disembark. They didn't say why. They didn't give me any explanation. They simply handed me a new key card for a different cabin. A standard cabin, they called it, with no view, no windows, no connection to the outside world, no way out. I had no choice but to return to the ship. And now, every day, I wait. I wait for whatever it is they've planned. And every day I wonder, who is still on the ship?